Hi, I'm John.
I'm Zen.
And I'm Julie, and we're with cNation.
Today we're looking at the lighter side of the 420 cannabis culture. Join us for some laughs, for some good times, and definitely for some head nodding when you say, yep, been there, done that. Good afternoon. Hey, it's John with cNation, and we are here to do another fun, almost entirely unscripted podcast. Again, with the compliments of High Times Magazine. This is the 10 Commandments of Marijuana Edible Safety. And it's from an article that they published on June 5th, 2014. And we'll give full credit to High Times as well as to Elise McDonough, who wrote the article back then. And the purpose of High Times coming up with the 10 Commandments of Marijuana Edible Safety came on the heels of New York Times columnist Maureen Dowd eating way too much THC while she was on a dispensary trip out in Colorado. Now, most everybody really heard about this story because, well, Maureen Dowd is really popular. She's a well-known columnist from the New York Times, one of the largest newspapers in the world, and she had a voice through the Times to really publish her experience after this. And you know, granted, it was 3.5 years ago, but it really got a lot of the naysayers about the cannabis industry kind of up in arms, and they felt like they had a lot of ammo. Well, if an adult can go to a dispensary in Colorado and have happened to them what happened to Maureen, then, well, anybody can, including our children and everything. Now, a slight difference here. Maureen Dowd is an adult. She walked into a dispensary and bought a 100 milligram candy bar. 100 milligrams is a potent dose. I know that there are those of you out there that feel like, oh, I just start my day with 100 and it goes up. Well, bully for you, I suppose, but for the average person, even for the average seasoned, experienced edibles consumer, 100 milligrams is a lot. If you figure that the average, serviceable dose of an edible is between 10 and 25 milligrams, 10 milligrams, if you're a seasoned edible consumer, you might find 10.
Kind of the lighter side.
On the lighter side. I'm going to tell you right now, we're pretty experienced edibles eaters. We've been to these legal states. We have some friends in states that are really excellent at what they do, and we've had every type of edible imaginable. Seriously, ice cream sandwiches,
meatball sandwiches.
And all the standard stuff, gummies and cookies and brownies and
chocolate,
all of
sodas.
It. Yeah. We've had sodas. Yeah, we've had it in every way, shape, or form, and we've had it in some doses that made us unhappy, mostly too much.
Yes,
which can be a little harrowing, even for a seasoned, edibles consumer. But, for Maureen Dowd to not have been fully informed.
Yeah. And for the label to have not said that.
Yeah, it is my understanding. Now, I'm not going to read every word that, that High Times published on this about Maureen, but it is my understanding that she had no prior experience with edibles at that point. And even 10 milligrams at that point is going to be too much for a first-time user. A lot of first-time smokers might say, what? It didn't even get me high. I didn't feel anything. I'm going to say that's roughly a true experience for a lot of people, is that the very first time, or maybe what they know was so mild. It takes a few times,
especially when
smoking.
It tastes delicious and you're just getting that mode of you want the munchies. And then you don't get high immediately,
But for the first time edible consumer, that THC through your bloodstream, once it passes through your liver, it is game on. I mean, unless you have a real problem digesting fat through pancreatitis. If you have a bad pancreas, you can maybe not process fat properly. And eventually even you'll get high from an edible if you eat like a double dose, etc. But For someone like Maureen Dowd, who had never had an edible in her life, for her to not be fully informed is pretty irresponsible, and it's one of the 10 Commandments here. We'll get to it. We have a solid opinion about not being fully informed. But I want to read this because this is what Maureen Dowd had to say about this after the fact. For an hour, I felt nothing. Okay, that's pretty standard with edibles. But, she went on, then I felt a scary shudder go through my body and brain. I barely made it from the desk to the bed, where I lay curled up in a hallucinatory state for the next 8 hours. That would be really scary. Even seasoned cannabis users, edible smokers, dabbers, it doesn't matter, can relate to this when you've consumed a little bit too much. You can feel that a little
really
bit of anxiety. It is a little bit of waves of panic coming up. Now, the seasoned cannabis user, particularly with edibles, maybe in a stout dose, closer to that 25, they'll sense that real uptake coming on hour and a half, whenever, and it can come on like a rush, like a big wave. Some deep breaths, but you know that that's what your body's doing. You know that that's what the THC in your body is doing to you, and you can manage that expectation because, well,
you're not freaking out because it's not you don't know what it's feeling when you're trying it for the first time.
Yeah, this is going to, that real uptake, and you edibles users really will understand this. That's about as high as you're going to be. So you know that, you're there. Okay, it's not going to go past this. It's just going to stay like this for several
for a while.
Yeah, you're at that final peak.
So sympathies to Maureen Dowd on this, and it's a bummer she wasn't fully informed. There's no way that she set out to consume 100 milligrams on a very first outing to write about it. Yeah. There's no way she did that. It's just, there are plenty of people on the planet quite willing to do that, and most of them are 18-year-old boys. So, she's got enough experience in life to not have to be experiencing hallucinatory stages of cannabis edibles just to have a story in the New York Times. You got plenty to cover. So anyway, enough about Maureen Dowd and her experience. That is what precipitated this article, and a responsible article, in fact, from High Times. The whole industry responded quite responsibly to Maureen Dowd's experience. So we want to get right to this. Thanks, High Time, for putting these together. Again, we could not agree more with these. I'm going to read the commandment, and there are 10 of them, but not necessarily read every word that they wrote, because we have something roughly to say about each of these things from from personal experience, etc. But I'll read these. Anything to say? Jump right in and get her done. Number 1, thou shalt go low and slow.
Which is exactly why the thing with Maureen Dowd.
Go low and slow. When you take that edible, don't wait 15 minutes and then eat again. And eat again because you're not feeling it. What happened to Zen, like what she discussed in her last podcast.
Yeah, before she knew it, she was 6 brownies deep.
And then I had to go to bed.
And then the first one started to come on. But it's really solid advice. Thou shalt go low and slow. Absolutely. Low is the dosage, and slow is redosing. Give yourself a couple of hours.
Give it time to digest.
There are a few different forms of edibles out there that can get to work more quickly. These sublingual tinctures that you maybe put under your tongue, they may go to work as quickly as in 30 minutes. There are some methods preparing edibles. If you're one who uses coconut oil to make your edibles, to extract the THC from the cannabis, there are some forms of coconut oil. They call them medium chain. I think it has to do with the size of the fat molecules in them. Anyway, the medium chain coconut oil will go to work in about 30-45 minutes because it doesn't have to go through your entire bloodstream and pass through your liver for it to start working like other forms of fat do, including other forms of coconut oil. But by and large, a great rule of thumb. Start with a manageable dose. If you're committed to being an edibles consumer,
Have realistic expectations of the times.
You don't have to hit the finish line today. Start with a 1 milligram dose, then go to 2, then go to 3, then go to 4. I think 5's a good starting point, to be quite honest. The High Times article suggests 10. I've got no real downside with that if you just remember that you're not going to die. So yeah, 2 hours. We're pretty content with a low dose and wait 2 hours and see how you are. You can always rinse, lather, repeat, and start again tomorrow on a little bit higher dose and find your footing on that. Number 2, thou shalt label homemade pot foods.
Yes.
Why?
So children don't eat them?
Amen.
So people just picking them up know that they are infused, so they know what they're going to be eating.
Right. And I think that's the primary reason. I don't think they're talking about, like, testing lab labeling.
Yeah.
You have to have each percentage of each terpene and everything.
Make it known that you don't want accidental ingestion of your edibles, friends, neighbors, the babysitter, your kids, everything. Absolutely. Label it, hide it, keep it out of prying eyes. If you got a cabinet that locks, keep them in there. There's no downside to doing this. So keep it away from people you don't want to accidentally ingest your edible. It might be as scary for you as it is for them if it's your young child, as an example. Yeah. So, number 3, thou shalt not mix with alcohol.
Totally.
Definitely.
Agree.
Any real world experiences or stories or people that you know?
Well, I would have to say,
yes,
I've had some experiences. I would have to say when I was drinking back in the day, I don't know anymore, but when I was drinking back in the day and I was really drunk, smoking made me sick.
Well, that was if you were already inebriated from alcohol
and you smoke that bowl,
it might just end your night. Absolutely.
And it does. It mostly ended my night. And so with edibles and then smoke, like, you have an edible, well, you might forget in 2 hours you had an edible, and you're like, true. I want to have a drink here, and you start drinking. Well, drinking too much and then the edible kicking in, you're gonna get the spins. You're gonna get sick. Well, obviously when you get sick, your blood's rushing more, so you're gonna get higher. So that's the way I felt. And it was just a bad combo.
Well, and that's just it. With, under the influence of alcohol. Now, none of us at this table drink, but we all have at times. And we all don't now for varying numbers of years and for varying numbers of reasons, but we just don't. But we all have experience with mixing cannabis and alcohol. And one of the problems with alcohol, now it's one thing to be sitting around smoking your water pipe or a joint or something when you're drunk. You're likely just to pass out. The initial uptake of the THC is such a downer on, a sedative on your system that it just might be too much and you'll pass out. But you lose a lot of your ability to reason properly when you're under the influence of alcohol. And for this reason, when you're around, all that munchy, sugary kind of edibles food, brownies, cupcakes, it doesn't really matter, and your inhibitions are down from alcohol, you just might start consuming and consuming and consuming.
Yeah, popping cookie after cookie.
And some of that Superman, I can do all of this. That's part of the stages of being drunk, is you're pretty much invincible. But, one of the ways that people, actually die from consuming too much alcohol is they drink too much, they pass out, they wind up on their back, they vomit. They choke to death on it. That's a real possibility with too much alcohol and too many edibles. Your motor skills will be greatly diminished. Your respiratory will be really slow and calm. You could find yourself in actually a tremendous amount of personal peril under the influence of too much alcohol and under the influence of too much THC. Yeah, to the point it might be a medical crisis before you know it. So, yeah, we couldn't agree more with that. Don't mix edibles with alcohol. We don't care if you prefer alcohol to be intoxicated. We don't care if you prefer edibles to be intoxicated.
Just don't mix the two of them.
They both have their time and place. So, there you go. Number 4, thou shalt eat a proper dinner.
Definitely. To be able to digest correctly, it's got to be with a lot of food in your stomach.
Yeah, that's just it. I mean, not only should you have a decent amount of food in your stomach, just for protection. You always eat a little bit before you go drinking. I agree to eat a little bit before you consume edibles. And like Zen said, I agree. The primary reason I've had edibles before, and I think we probably all have, that we feel like the uptake is really slow. Well, have you eaten recently? There's I always find that if I can stimulate my digestion and get it going, then yes, it will, my stomach, my digestive system will tear through the cannabis edible and get that stuff going through my bloodstream. So I agree 100% with thou shalt eat a proper dinner, but that's to stimulate your THC uptake mostly and not for any other reason. Number 5, thou shalt not drive or operate heavy machinery.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely agree.
Yeah, I do agree. Now, I'm one of these people. I'm a really good driver. I'm a conscientious driver. I'm roughly a speed limit driver and a defensive driver. I won't get behind the wheel, even if I've had the smallest dose of cannabis. I know people that swear they're better drivers under the influence of cannabis. Maybe that's true. I'm just not one of them. Cannabis, even in smaller doses, does affect my body, does affect my perception. But
then you have those people that also say, when I'm drinking, I can drive better. No, it's the same effect. Don't do cannabis while driving, and don't do alcohol driving.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. So if you're going to consume cannabis, be in a place, be at home, be out of the club, be somewhere,
or be with somebody that's not consuming.
Yeah. It's no different than having a designated driver when you go out to the clubs because you're going to drink alcohol. Look, call Uber, man. Yeah. They'll get you there to and back safely.
And us saying, it's going to take 2 hours to kick in. It also depends on how your body runs. Everybody's body's a little bit different. So you're like thinking, hey, I'm going to leave at this spot. I'm going to eat this edible real quick and then take off. You got to realize if you get pulled over in that action and they want to drug test you, they're going to be taking you in the hospital. They're going to be drug testing you there.
2 or 3 hours later, probably.
And your THC levels are going to be extremely high. Exactly. You're going to get in a lot more trouble. So
and they're not going to care that it really came on strong 2 hours later.
Yeah, exactly. They don't know the difference. You're going to say, you don't know when you took that. And you said, I was completely sober at the time, but now I'm really high. Well, that was your own decision to do the edible and get behind a wheel, even if you were going somewhere that was 10 minutes.
It was. And Jules, you bring up a really good point. There's no reason to be irresponsible with edibles, with anything really. Yep. But edibles are so much fun. And the bang for your buck, boy, it's almost impossible to beat. So, don't drive, don't operate heavy machinery, treat it just like you would drinking alcohol, etc. There's no downside to not driving. Yep. So, thou shalt keep away from children.
Definitely, which goes into the labeling.
It does. It goes
into the packaging.
To all of that, the packaging. So, what did we see?
Supervision.
Yeah, what did we see when Colorado first legalized for the adult use marketplace in 2012? Well, we saw all the really clever packaging of edibles, particularly things that resembled products on your shelves, various gummy bear worm products, various Jolly Rancher type products, cookies and Rice Krispies. And they not only looked like the product you could get off the shelf, their packaging, now in addition to them, a lot of them maybe being a little bit in violation of some of these companies' copyrights. They weren't calling it the exact same product, but if your labeling looks a lot like that. But, the state of Colorado, much to their credit, and we applaud this, basically said, they rewrote the laws and said, this is, we don't really care what kind of edibles you make and sell, but we saw the effects of the tobacco industry, attracting children to their products and all those things, and we're just not going to allow that here. So a lot of the packaging, a lot of the labeling, we've been in and around these dispensaries since they first popped up. The adult use ones, no one at this table has a medicinal card in any state, so we've been to the adult use dispensaries in a few states, and we've really seen this. And the bottom line, if you really think about this, who concerns themselves with the packaging of something? Kids do.
Yeah.
That's what attracts them to the product. And marketers know this. They use all the bright colors and all the bright animals. And all. Do adults care about the packaging? We
Not
don't.
really.
We tear that thing open and consume it and never give that packaging a second thought.
We care about the words on the packaging, not the picture.
Absolutely. The industry corrected that for the most part. You buy edibles in a dispensary now. Yeah, a candy bar looks like a candy bar. But it doesn't look like a candy bar that you could buy off the shelves at your local Kroger's or
It looks
wherever.
distinctly different.
It does, and they generally have a big green cannabis leaf on them and THC in big letters. And, that's it. Now, what happens if your kid does get into your edible stash? Not a lot when it's all said and done. Are they going to flip out for a minute? Yeah. You might too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But they're going to sleep it off. And they probably haven't consumed an amount that's really going to be, too much of a concern. But
keep your eye on it.
Yeah, just keep it away from them to avoid the whole thing.
And don't even eat them in front of them.
Really
you're eating candy in front of them. They're wondering why you can't share the candy.
Yeah,
just like you wouldn't want to drink around your kids. Just keep it away from the children.
100%. And there's just all sorts of ways to do that. Keep them in lock boxes. Just all of that. You know how to be responsible around your children. Be responsible around your children. Number 7. I love this one. Thou shalt have unmedicated snacks on hand.
Oh, yeah, because you're going to get the munchies. And what are you going to eat? Whatever you've got on hand.
So,
you're like, oh, that's all the way over there. I don't want to get up.
For sure. We've been in and around this industry for a long time. And to be quite honest, mostly on the consumer side of this. But when it became apparent to us that Colorado was on the move, and I'm going to say this probably dates back to 2011, maybe sometime into 2012, but we've really tossed around and debated how we really want to participate in this industry. And some of that at one point in time was to own a bakery, that made these products, and maybe to own a dispensary and all those. One of the things we really thought the industry should embrace, and granted, when we were thinking about owning a bakery, this was a little easier to do than it is in the dispensary setting, although I honestly don't really know why. But, let's say you can buy a 6-pack of infused cookies. Well, I've done enough edibles, and you've done enough edibles, and you've done enough edibles to know you get the munchies after a while, and sometimes it can be severe. And what you ate, you might want more of. I have, to this day, I've never understood why I can't buy that 6-pack of cookies that has one infused cookie in it, dead center, green, looks different, arrows and neon signs pointing at it. This is the money shot, this is the one. And have the other 5 in that pack just be regular old cookies that I can munch on. And I'm not in the edibles manufacturer business. I'm not competition. I'm not threat to anybody out there that's doing it. If you make edibles for dispensaries, really seriously consider making these munchie packs.
Yeah.
People will buy them like crazy. And you can charge more for them. People understand that. Yeah, give me a 6-pack with 1 infused cookie and 5 that I can munch on later. I will buy your product on return. I guarantee it. Anyway, definitely keep your unmedicated snacks on hand because you're
going to have the munchies.
You are. And you're going to drive yourself crazy if you've got nothing to munch on.
Munchie
or
and
worse,
drinks.
Munch on more edibles. All right, I've seen it happen. I have seen it happen. Now, number 8, we don't have a lot of experience with. Actually, roughly zero experience with.
I don't know.
Number 8, thou shalt keep CBD capsules on hand. And the purpose of this, of course, is that CBD
counteracts the THC.
Exactly. CBD can counteract the effects of THC. But it's not the only thing that can. It might be the fastest working, but, if you can get your hands on anything that's got the limonene terpene in it, and we're talking about, we find that in a lot of citrus, orange peels and lemon peels and things like this. Grate some lemon peel into a cup of hot water like you're making a tea. The limonene will also help your, the effects of too much THC. I'm going to tell you though, and you two can speak for yourself here, I've never been so intoxicated off an edible that I felt like I needed to, mitigate that and take something that would help me do that. Now, I've had to go for walks and but nothing like, I can't stand this, and I need to ingest something. So I actually have no experience ingesting something to kind of alleviate the effects of THC.
Well, so I'm newer to this. Like, on this subject, I'm newer. I didn't know that you could take things to help you lower your high. I wish I would have, because I would be trying these things.
Right.
But I think it was like a couple prior podcasts that we've done. That's when I found out that the CBD actually lowers it. And I'm just like, what? This is all new to me.
Yeah.
And that's why, I think that people do need to be informed. If you're too high, you can do these things, because when you're too high, you're panicking, you're freaking out. Am I going to get any more higher? And then you start the spins and you start getting sick. I've gotten sick. And so it's like, I wish I would have known those things to help me not get to that point.
And it leads to anxiety and even panicking. And neither of those things are good for anybody.
Exactly.
Not their mental state, for sure.
And it doesn't last for 10 to 20 minutes. It lasts a long while.
Yeah. And I mean, that's obviously the appeal of edibles. Is
the longer lasting highs.
I might be into this thing for 6 or 7 or 8 hours. And that's appealing to a great number of people, whether recreationally or whether you're a cancer patient or anybody else trying to maybe mitigate some pain or whatnot. The longer this can be effective in your body, the better for you. It just means less times you have to consume it in a 24-hour period. And anyway, we all understand that. So yeah, no real experience with having to mitigate too much THC, but we understand the need to. Mm-hmm. And maybe there's been a time or two where we might have welcomed that if we could have mitigated that a little bit. But in another podcast we did talk about some other things, some cool water in your face, out on a cool night for a walk, just some fresh air. These things will really help. If you got restrictive clothing on, etc. But the CBD or the limonene seem to be really top shelf answers for this. So
drop a comment. Let us know if you've done the CBD
Man, no question. And I'm going to tell you, back to you edibles manufacturers again, throw a 5 milligram CBD pill in your packaging, just in case. It's one pill.
Yep.
It charged me $1 more. It's not a bad packaging idea. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's just my idea. I'd probably go broke as an edibles maker because I'd give it all away. But what do I really care? Number 9, thou shalt remain calm. Yeah,
pretty much like what we were just saying. If you're way too high,
because you're not gonna die.
Yeah,
know that. Yeah,
you just gotta keep that in your mind. Yes, I'm this high, but I'm gonna come down soon. Like, it will calm down. It will calm down. Just don't keep panicking.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes that's easier said than done, given that panic state of mind. But it doesn't take too many trips down the yellow brick road here before you're really able to manage that and stay calm. Because the one thing you're going to realize is that, after you've been about as intoxicated as you're going to be after having consumed an edible, let's say 3 hours down the road, 4 hours, you're peaked and you're probably plateaued at this point. You're as high as you're going to get. Well, that should be a calming effect on your body. And if you allow that, you can just say, oh, I'm not going to be any worse than I am right now. So being calm, but thinking calm too. This is as messed up as I'm going to be. This is intoxicated as I'm going to be.
And
Okay, I
remember
can
what you
manage
just
that.
took out also. Like, remember exactly what you just took so you don't do that again.
Yeah, right.
You know, keep it in little notes. Hey, I don't want to be doing this, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
so,
right. So you could log that at cushjournal.com, right?
Yep.
Was this a good experience? It was not. We can give you some reasons
Input the
why
amount
it was
and everything,
not.
yeah.
Exactly. So here's number 10. Thou shalt never prank.
That should have been number
for
one.
Number one.
Yeah, it's got an exclamation point after it too, as in thou shalt not
Yeah,
prank.
that should have definitely been number
Never,
one.
yeah.
It's a good, it is. That should literally be, the number one thing. If we're talking about the 10 commandments of edibles, it's a fine way to wrap up this article because it does really punctuate, what this is all about. But I'm with you. This could be number one easily. And I think in all of our estimations, it's always number one in our books because we're firm believers that people should always consent to what they're going to put into their bodies.
Exactly.
It's not funny. It can be really scary for the recipient of your chocolate. We've all read the articles. Gosh, I was reading something. It was a funeral down in San Diego. I'm going to say last year. An old cannabis activist. And okay, there's likely going to be cannabis at an old cannabis activist's funeral. These are the people that are coming to the funeral. But they had a lot of cannabis edibles there that were unmarked. And there were a lot of people that were in their 60s and 70s at this person's funeral that, what do they wind up? Yeah, 911 calls, and here comes ambulances and others to this funeral because people weren't informed. And I'm going to tell you, I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky guy. There aren't a lot of things that really, that can really just set me off. But this is one of them. It's not funny.
This is equal
you
to
really
roofying someone.
Well, it is.
And you really don't know what that person's doing the next couple of hours. They could be getting in a vehicle, all of a sudden they start tripping.
Well,
that is
and they
not
don't know what's
safe.
wrong with
exactly.
them.
Yeah, in fact, we Jules and I had a lunch with someone not too long ago who shared with us his experience. Now, no one was trying to really be sneaky or anything with him. They just thought that he knew what he was eating, but he didn't. And he's roughly an inexperienced edibles user. He's not a prude. He's not anything like that. He's just inexperienced. He actually wound up going to the emergency room because he did not know what was happening. And, that's honestly the effect of a cannabis edible is that if you don't know what's coming on, it can be really scary because there is no other sensation naturally derived that would ever make your body feel that way in any other experience. Now, an opioid, you take some pain medication. I've always said that I thought the edibles experience was close to that, that Lortab experience. It's kind of an all-body numbing kind of thing. But honestly, there's no experience like that uptake of an edible and like that duration of an edible. And if you've never experienced it,
and you weren't told about it,
Yeah,
that can be scary.
I'd be calling 911 too. I'd be going to the emergency room saying, I have no idea what's going on with my body. I don't know if I'm dying. I don't know if I'm stroking. I don't know what. And, we were really sympathetic with this guy that we had lunch with because he's otherwise a seasoned individual when it comes to being and a little bit intoxicated, inebriated. He drinks responsibly, etc. So, and, he told us he saw those very same people just like a month later at another function and mentioned it to them. And they were really kind of horrified because they didn't know. And they told him that, we just assumed that you knew what we were taking because we asked you.
Be
Are
redundant.
you sure?
Yeah, you
Make sure
sure.
people-
Yeah, you got to make sure this has this in it. You know,
Tell them more than once.
People
Be
don't-
annoying
yeah,
with
yeah.
that. Just make sure they know what they're eating.
There's no downside to.
and let them know how potent it is.
Yeah.
You know, this is really strong. Like, you know how big I am. I can take this much, so maybe do half of a dose on yours and just give it some time.
I'm gonna tell you,
Slow.
if you're a cannabis edibles prankster out there, and bad things come your direction, yeah, you deserve it. It's not fun. You wouldn't want anybody slipping you LSD
Exactly.
or anything.
Yeah.
You have a right to know what you're ingesting, which means I have a responsibility to tell you that, hey, I made this in my kitchen. You know, we're guinea pigging it. We don't know if it's going to be super stony or nothing at all, but here you go. You want one? Yes or no? At least if you say yes, I can look you in the eye and say, well, you said yes. I'm in the same boat
I
as you.
told you it has
know?
weed in it. You said yes.
Well, we wake up off the kitchen floor 8 hours later and say that was too stiff of a dose. You know? At least we could say, yeah, but we knew we took it. So, man, I don't even know what else to say except it's not cool. And don't do this to people. So there you have it. The 10 Commandments of Marijuana Edible Safety as presented by High Times Magazine on June 5th, 2014, written by Elise McDonough. We really appreciate the time and effort that they put into this. We agree 100%. Start out with a low dose. Pace yourself. Give yourself a couple of hours. If you're committed to this over a lifetime, then you got all that time to adjust your expectations, your durations, your all of that stuff. But low dose, couple of hours, absolutely. Don't prank people. I'll come and punch you in the face, something like that. We'll call you out by name on our podcast and make you feel shame and spend 2 minutes in the penalty box. So, but no joke. Don't prank people with edibles. For cNation, I'm John.
I'm Zen.
And I'm Julie.
Thanks, and tune in next week for another look at the 420 cannabis culture.